Hey, what's going on everyone? Welcome back to Take Flight Garage. You join me on another 3 a.m. video. So cut to the chase, long story short, in the spirit of this whole 944 buyer's guide kind of little mini series that I've been working on, the last sort of piece that I wanted to talk about was tools that you might need when you're first starting out working on a 944. So we've got a couple viewers out there who are out there shopping, and one in particular is a younger person who brought up that idea, and it was something I was thinking about doing. So I'm trying to get this video shot in time because hopefully he's going to go look at a car soon. So wish him good luck, and without further ado, let's dive right into it. So there's the car. This is the box that I've amassed a bunch of stuff in, and 98% of everything I use is in this very top drawer. And if we come down here, this Kirkland tool set that we got from Costco, I don't know how many years ago, because it's been a while by now, probably at least almost 10 years, because I've had this slightly less time than I've had both the cars. So this toolkit has gotten me through pretty much every job that I've needed to do on either of the Porsches that I've owned. So any sort of extensive tool, I mean, this isn't even really an extensive one. This one's pretty basic, but I mean, it's got everything that I've needed, because majority of the bolts on the 944 are either going to be 10, 13s, 15s, 17s, and 19s. So as long as you can get those in varying sizes, short sockets, deep sockets, got a couple adapters. We'll talk about some Allens here in a second, but all three varying drives. It helps to have one swivel socket or swivel ratchet. That definitely helps in some cases. I've got a couple swivel adapters, and I'll talk about a couple specific jobs that require very specific tools. But overall, the vast majority of all the work I've had to do on my car has been really taken care of by this one toolkit. I mean, I haven't really had to buy a secondary toolkit. But what I will say is there's probably a couple size wrenches that you might want to double up on. And it's along those lines of those most common size bolts. So I probably double up on 10 millimeter open wrenches. I probably do 10, 12, 13, 17, and 19 millimeter. Just because there's a couple, especially if you're doing the suspension, there's a lot of 19s involved in that. But the only other thing is I would recommend, if you can, spend a little bit more to get some ratcheting wrenches, because those will save your life. Because there's a couple areas on this car where, for the most part, it's pretty easy to work on, but there's a couple areas that are pretty tight, especially in the engine bay. So yeah, basically any basic toolkit that's like this, as long as it's got majority of those sizes, you should be okay. And I'll walk you through some of the additional things that I've had to purchase just kind of over the years. And a lot of this stuff I've bought as I get to that job and realize I need that tool. So hopefully this will help you out so that you won't have to be in that situation where you got to run down the auto parts store. So this is the big kahuna, right? This is everything that I've used. The next most valuable tool that I own is this 1/4 inch threaded pipe. This is what I use as a cheater bar for when I need to break bolts that are super tight or heavily torqued. For example, doing the rear shocks, those bottom struts the bottom bolts are torqued to, I think it was 90 foot-pounds, something crazy, similar to the wheel torque. So a cheater bar, a breaker bar, whatever you want to use to give you more leverage to break those bolts is absolutely necessary. This thing has saved my life plenty of times. This also helped me hammer the struts in. which was a whole fiasco, but we'll talk about that in the suspension video. So these two are the big ones. This is what I'd recommend: a cheater bar and a pretty extensive toolkit. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the more specific tools here. Just sort of basic things that you might need: a hammer, a mallet, definitely some extensions, torque wrenches. If you can, I'd splurge on a digital torque wrench. There's nothing wrong with using an old school torque wrench like this, but if you're not paying attention, these can have a little bit of like tolerance there. So when you tighten it, if you're not paying attention, you can, maybe bump up the setting by 10 pounds, and that might be enough to strip out some threads. So yeah, digital torque wrench is what I would recommend, but there's nothing wrong with saving a little money and going the old school way. This guy's also a torque wrench, but this one is smaller torques. This one you can do in inch pounds, which is kind of cool. Various size extensions, adapters, those definitely help for a couple jobs. Doesn't hurt to have those so that you can swap between bigger sizes or different size ratchets. Let's talk about these right here, right off the bat. So a couple of these are 22s. The 22 millimeters are I use this basically for a lot of the suspension work. Doing the rear shocks, I believe you'll need a 22, and doing the, the upper strut mounts, breaking the top shock nuts. These are 22s, that's what these guys are right here. So if you're ever gonna do suspension, that's what that's for. Again, just more of like a swivel head kind of socket. That will help you when you're doing the, I basically got both of these guys, like a 90-degree, and then that swivel joint when I was trying to do the speed and reference sensor bracket on the other car. That was a whole fiasco. But something like that will definitely help you try to get to the back end of the engine bay. And that's also why I got these guys, Allen key heads or Allen heads. The most common sizes are probably, I'd say, maybe 6 and 8 millimeter Allens. So I would just grab whatever size you can. Again, this is just Pittsburgh, nothing crazy. Anything that covers those sizes, you should be good. I keep some drill bits just for sort of general purpose. These are various size Phillips head screws and flatheads. These are tap chucks so that you can use them on a ratchet. I literally just had to order these yesterday because after the threads blew out on that bolt, I didn't have anything that could fit under the car to try to tap it out. So these allow you to use a socket to insert a tap chuck in there, and you can ratchet it in that way. Speaking of taps, here's the tap kit. This Pittsburgh one actually does have a lot of the bolt sizes on the 944. The pitch threads are a little bit weird. Typical bolt sizes for M8s and M10s will be 1.5, but the 944 has a lot of 1.25s. So a 1.25 tap is pretty helpful. So we got that guy going. These triple squares right here, you're gonna need these for when you're doing the CV axles in the rear of the car. This big giant, I think this is like a 17, yeah, there's a 17 mil Allen. This is for the transmission drain plugs. I recommend, if you're gonna do that job, be super careful. And I think Renline makes some magnetic regular hex heads that thread in there, so you don't have to worry about those freaking bolts, because those things suck, man. That job it should be such a quick job, but those bolts get frozen and it just blows. So definitely you're gonna need one of those if you're doing that for the first time, and hopefully you won't need it again if you swap out those bolts on the transmission for the drain plugs. Needle nose, snips, those always definitely come in handy. Some adjustable wrenches. I haven't had to use these too much, but they do come in handy if you are like just short-handed on something and you just need to try to get a job done quickly. This can really come and save your butt if you don't have the right size. But like I said, I haven't really had to use these too much. Not sure if I covered all this stuff yet, but the hammer and the mallet. Again, that can really help you out if you need to break some bolts loose. I definitely recommend using the rubber mallet for that because the shock is less intense than than a regular hammer. So that will sort of help ensure that you're not going crazy and snapping bolts. These guys right here are little fuel line clamps. So when you're doing the fuel pump that's eventually going to burn out, especially if it's the original one, this is what you use to clamp the fuel line to stop the fuel draining backwards or out of the tank or anything like that. So a set of these is pretty handy. Wire strippers, of course, for all the electrical work that you're going to have to do to clean up any sort of previous owner's wiring mistakes or to make your own wiring mistakes. Vice locks or yeah, those definitely help. Just be careful with those because it's real easy to break a finger if you're not paying attention and that closes on you. C-clamps definitely help for when you're trying to press bushings, but honestly, if you're doing suspension work, I would recommend, like I said in that video where I was talking about doing the sway bar bushings, at that point it's easier to just take those bushings to a shop that has a press, so that way you can get them pressed in that way. But C-clamps do help for when you're doing things like brake pads, if you have something that's kind of stuck. Thankfully, I haven't had to use those in a while, not since my other car. An adapter so that you can use an impact, which I'll show you the one that I've been using this whole time. An impact is really important for when you're working with bolts that require a ton of torque and are fighting or working against some sort of spring tension. This also makes everything like 9 million times faster when you're undoing bolts, but you don't really want to just cinch down with an impact because it's really easy to strip out bolts and stuff like that. So I always recommend getting something started with a socket, and then, you know, if you have the space, then to go ahead and use the impact to get it down, to zip it down pretty quick. The only real thing I've used this on is, to be honest, is just the shock towers. Everything else I use this on is to really undo screws and that sort of thing, just to get it done super quick. So an impact does help, but that Milwaukee little handheld one is probably a better choice, just for as an all-purpose use, multi-use or general use tool. So let's keep going here. Here's some of those other ratchets that we were kind of talking about. This is a weird one. So this 24 millimeter that I had to cut, if I remember correctly, I did this so that I could do the oil pressure sending unit. There's a specific wrench that you can try to get the oil pressure sending unit out, or you can just go buy a 24 and take a hacksaw to it and cut it so that it fits. That's a very specific case tool. There's this big giant 32 millimeter wrench that I got for some reason or another. This might have been for spinning the engine by hand. I don't remember what I got this for, actually. It's been a while since I've had to use it. But there's a use for this, so I just don't remember what it is off the top of my head. That's the biggest wrench I've had to buy out of anything. And then, like I said, maybe just a couple duplicates of some things. So 19s, there's been a couple instances where you'll have a nut and a bolt on either side of something. And so you'll need two of the same size wrench or ratchet to spin it off. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. My phone overheated. So, man, you guys thought I was kidding. It's still like 100 degrees in here right now. So, anyways, before I was rudely interrupted by the weather, I was saying that it's a good idea to have multiples of certain sizes. Definitely double up on your 17s, double up on your 19s. The 22 mil, I believe actually the 22, I don't remember if the bushings that go to the lower control arms, that top nut, I believe that was a 17. I don't think that was a 22, but it might have been a 22. So, yeah, obviously I've got it. I needed it for something. I just don't remember what at the moment. But, yeah, if you can, like I said, I recommend getting ratcheting wrenches, because this will just make your life a whole lot easier, especially in those tight spots. So those are awesome. Just a quick electronic screwdriver can help you out when you're doing quick things like the airbox. These smaller ratchets, definitely, again, when you're disconnecting the bolts inside the airbox for either the MAF or the airflow meter, it's a little tight in some of those areas, so that's just something to kind of look out for. But other than that, the only other real things that I keep are just electrical connections, some spare wire, that kind of stuff. And I would recommend that, like, I wouldn't say that if you are buying a 944 that you should immediately run out and buy all this stuff. This, like I said, has been sort of amassed as I've come across needing them job by job, you know? So this is probably just the real, like, the most basic overview that I can really give. Again, there's a couple specialty tools for things like timing belts, you know, like a flywheel lock, and you know, the special bolts to do the pulleys and all that other kind of stuff. I don't necessarily see someone who's a beginner who's just buying their first car is doing a T-belt job on their own, unless you're going through and you're specifically buying a car with either, you know, an already blown motor or something like that, and you're just wanting to learn how to put it together. But that's yeah. Oh, I guess before I forget, spark plug gap tool. A lot of the plugs, depending on the brand, should come pre-gapped, but don't forget to gap your spark plugs. That's a pretty important tool. So yeah, I mean, that's really like 98%, 99% of all the tools that I use is just everything that was in that top drawer, and then this Kirkland kit down there. And that's pretty much gotten me through every job that I've needed to do. There's a couple other things that you can get, like power bleeders for the brakes. Again, bleeding stuff like the clutch and the brakes is really kind of a pain, and especially for someone who's just starting out, that's probably something I'd recommend having a shop do. But other than that, yeah, I don't think there's anything else. I mean, other than just a couple quick things like jacks. If you can afford it, definitely go for a lift. It makes your life easier. A set of dial calipers too probably wouldn't hurt, just so that you can verify things if you need to, or take some measurements. But I haven't really had to use any calipers on the car unless, you know, maybe you're doing like 3D printing, or maybe you want to make a custom adapter for a radio or something like that, and you need some pretty specific measurements. But yeah, nothing too crazy. That's really all that I've used so far, and it's not too bad. So I hope this helps you out, and I'm sure other people in the comments will maybe chip in with a couple funny custom tools that they've had to make, like cutting that 22 or whatever that size wrench was for the oil pressure sending unit. But yeah, that's all I got, man. Good luck wrenching on the car, and enjoy it. We'll see you in the next one. I shot 20 minutes. And in 20 minutes, I failed to mention the two most important diagnostic tools that you'll need. And that is, drum roll please, a voltmeter. Definitely gonna need a voltmeter. And a fuel pressure tester.